Hello and welcome to another edition of SuperConnectivity. I'm your host, Charlie, the Professor Esser, and with me as always is...
Phil, sick as a dog, Perch.
Hey, Phil. Feel better,
Hey.
Phil. Yes, poor Phil, he's not on his... He's not firing on all cylinders today, but his quiet pauses will give us time to contemplate how crazy he thinks I really am. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. We just got two things. One is we got a pretty amazing new trailer for Batman versus Superman. I know this is a Marvel podcast, but don't worry, I'm going to tie it all in. Which, first off, in classic Marvel fashion, really embraced the fun and the humor and the lightheartedness of the superhero genre, which is a big departure from everything that DC had done prior to this. I really kind of felt like they really wanted to say, hey, we can do a Marvel movie too. Because, it opens up and you've got Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor being all wacky and silly and, joshing with Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne and kind of overly knowingly about the whole thing. Sort of like so does Lex Luthor know these two guys' secret identities too? Which, hey, it works for me if they want to go that story. I mean, let's face it, they're not that good of secret identities.
I know, but he looks like their kid brother or something.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was the thing that kind of... So here's this thing. I'm watching this, and all I can think about, just to tie this back to Marvel, was Ben Affleck's Daredevil. Because one thing that I think everyone... you can have a lot of opinions about Daredevil. Some people say it's not as bad as this, it's not as bad as that. It was, these were its strong points, this is where it fell apart. One thing I think that pretty much everyone kind of universally said, this is one thing that we can all agree was bad about it, is when they decided to take a calculating and somber sociopath like Bullseye and turn him into a manic sociopathic leprechaun. And, and really just having Bullseye just sort of jumping around like a sociopathic manic leprechaun really kind of took away from the power of the character, I think a lot of people felt. And watching Jesse Eisenberg, as this sort of like, hey, I'm wacky, zany Lex Luthor. It kind of felt like they were trying to, it's like, well, it's a Batman film. We need to have the Joker. Oh, we can't really have the Joker, can we? Well, we'll just have Lex Luthor be the Joker. That'll work.
Yeah, but the Joker's coming in Suicide Squad, and Affleck even made the comment. He's like, I just have issues with people dressing like clowns or something.
Yes. Well, and that was that. Like I said, there's a lot of things that were great. And dang, I'm going to say this flat out. When Wonder Woman shows up at the end, and they're like, "Is she with you? I thought she was with you." I'm sorry, I don't want to watch Batman v Superman. I want to watch Wonder Woman. I want to watch this Wonder Woman film because that looks so much better. Whatever that Wonder Woman thing is, that's the part of the film that looks like it's going to be interesting. And that's like from one scene of her walking into frame. That's how powerful that image is. So, and they have talked a bit about Wonder Woman and because I think they actually have started working on the Wonder Woman film because they have I saw some stills of it. And it apparently starts off in World War I, which, for what it's worth, I had said years ago when they were first talking about this, that the way you tell a good Wonder Woman story is you make her DC's Captain America. You make her the woman out of time. You make her this immortal goddess of war who's been fighting these battles for centuries and who basically falls in love with this flyer. And I would have done it in World War II, but we can go to World War I and it's fine. Falls in love with
Steve Trevor.
Steve Trevor, and has to watch him grow old and die. And and unlike Cap, who is just frozen while Peggy grows old and dies, you know, Wonder Woman has to be there the whole time. And, you know, when you think about it, that's what Cap would have had to been, because yeah, he would have been around for 40 years, but it's not like Cap ages like normal people, and so that loss is so much more powerful for someone like Wonder Woman, and that is the pathos of Wonder Woman, that she is this person who is separate from her own world and yet trying to do her best to save the world. That the world of man is this chauvinistic, misogynistic place, but really Paradise Island, when she, after she's gone off island and when she comes back, probably isn't a home to her anymore either, because she's been to the outside world and she's seen things and seen different ways of the world to be, and knows that the perfection of Paradise Island is not necessarily as advertised. So, I really think that they're doing a great story for Wonder Woman, and I'm very excited about that. Based on one publicity still and 10 seconds of a trailer about Batman and Superman pretending to be Captain America and Iron Man.
But that trailer.
I'm sorry.
The trailer during Gotham wasn't even a trailer. That one was like 10 seconds long.
Yeah, well, that was just a scene from the film, which because I actually saw that before I saw the trailer. So somewhere.
Yeah, so did I.
Yeah. And I saw that and I was like, so Superman's the bad guy now? And it's like everything that the trailer that was great about the trailer is like not in that clip. And that clip is everything that people like are worried about with this Batman Superman film, that it's this dark, brooding, woe is we, the billionaire and the all-powerful God man, Life is hard. I'm a billionaire, and my parents are dead. A lot of people whose parents are dead who aren't billionaires, Bruce. Like Dick Grayson. He's a guy who's got a tragic story, okay? His parents are dead, and then he gets adopted by some crazy rich dude, who dresses him in some pretty unflattering clothing. I'm just going to say it. No, we pick on the Batman, but no. But really, when you think about it, Grayson's story a lot more devastating than Bruce's story, because Bruce has $1 billion, and it's $1 billion is really good for wiping away tears. Yeah, well, it's like Tony said in Invincible Iron Man 1. Nobody wants to hear about your problems when you're a billionaire, because you're a billionaire. But I still have problems. Like, yeah, but you're a billionaire. So, but no, I was very excited about it. Like I said, I'm not sold on Eisenberg. I think Eisenberg might be bad for the story.
Yeah, take you out of the story, maybe.
Well, it's like, I don't know if, and it's not like there's not precedent for some kind of a crazy Lex Luthor. I mean, certainly, the Superboy Lex Luthor, after he loses his hair, you get that sort of madness going, because of course the aluminum oxide, that Superboy blew into his face from the chemical fire that made his hair fall out, infects his brain a bit and drives him a little nutty. Some interesting thoughts on this too, which is that the suggestion that Lex Luthor may create a synthetic kryptonite in this, and that it may have a similar outcome as the synthetic kryptonite in my favorite Superman film, Superman 3.
What?
That is the best one. I'm sorry. I don't care what you want to say. Superman 3 is the best Superman film, because here are the three things that Superman 3 gives us. First off, it gives us believable non-Kryptonian supervillains who are both, first off, you have people who have the one truly awesome superpower that you need in this world, money, billions of dollars, and a guy who has super intellect in Richard Pryor's hacker character, who, and it is, I've never understood why DC has never brought that character into the DC universe as this, sort of villainous super genius hacker guy who maybe is, not not necessarily evil, but is just this ultimate information broker. So sort of like how this Whisperer character we have in Captain America right now gets played out. That would be a great character to have in the DC universe, sort of an anti-Oracle in the way that Barbara Gordon is the Oracle and the computer expert, and having this guy sort of be the Oracle for villains. This guy who can get you any information you need, and he just wants to build his brainiac supercomputer.
Yeah, well, they kind of had that pre-New 52 and anti-Oracle. It was the calculator. They kind of reinvented the calculator as like the anti-Oracle.
Yeah, but did he have a sweet Richard Pryor mustache?
No.
So then he's not as good. Because Richard Pryor was awesome in that role. He's so embodied this character who really made it. And like I said, it gets a lot of flack. I don't necessarily know why it gets a lot of flack, except for the fact that it doesn't have Lex Luthor, which Superman can have more than one villain. I was watching Cracked did a piece recently about like all the things that Hollywood is afraid to do with superhero films, and one of them is they're afraid to let Spider-Man leave school because and they make this point that Spider-Man was only in school for like 1/3 of his entire, or like not even a third, but like it was like the first 8 years of his existence he's in school. And then after that, he is a guy out living his life for the past, 50 years,
Yeah.
And it's such but yeah, every time we see Spider-Man, he's never a grown adult Spider-Man. He's always going back to being a kid in high school, maybe a kid in college, but they never let him graduate. And really in the comic book, he graduates by, his 8th year as Spider-Man. And then he's out in the world and he's working for J. Jonah Jameson and all that kind of stuff. So, but when one of the things that they make this point of is that Superman, with the exception of, and it's actually not true because Superman 3 and Superman 4, although Superman 4 you do have Lex Luthor in it, you do have non-Zod Luthor villains. Actually, Superman 4 was supposed to have Bizarro because the nuclear Superman was supposed to be a Bizarro Superman. But they basically decided that they were playing it too campy. And, when the later Superman say, we're getting a little too campy here, then that went a little off the rails. But there was some great footage you can find on YouTube of the Superman 4 Bizarro character. Before they decided to make him the nuclear Superman. But Superman 3, to me, is the best one because, of course, it is not a Luthor villain, yet also gives us things that would eventually become the basis of the Luthor villains, which is this idea of this guy who's insanely rich and how that gives him power that Superman can't come to terms. That you can't punch a guy whose power is I have $1 million. If his power is I have $1 billion, you can't just punch him. Because
you can, but it'll be a quick fight.
Well, yeah, but more to the point is you're going to get sued. I mean, he could punch him, he could kill him, but of course Superman doesn't kill. That's not his way. And more to the point, it's like you can't just go around punching people. And if you can't go around punching just a normal guy, that's the thing. It's like supervillains. The big mistake most supervillains make is they throw that first punch. Whereas if you don't throw that first punch, the superheroes are kind of at a loss because they can't hit you just for no reason. If you're just a guy, doing what you're doing, letting your lawyers decide if what you did was legal or not.
Well, you know why they go with the rich guys most of the time is because how believable is it if every time Superman, you can't overpower Superman, an opponent can't overpower Superman physically most of the time.
Exactly.
So, what power can they have that he doesn't have?
Yeah.
Money.
Yeah. Although apparently they're bringing in Doomsday, and I guess the suggestion is the rumor on the internet is that basically they turn Zod into Doomsday, which, okay, sure, why not?
Well, I also had that conversation with Lilith over on World's Finest. I was saying I don't have a problem with them turning Zod into Doomsday because wouldn't you need something from Krypton to physically injure Superman? but I don't know if I buy Lex Luthor creating Zod. Maybe if it's Luthor being manipulated by, say, Brainiac or something.
That's a possibility, and maybe we'll get Brainiac, and maybe that's why he's acting so crazy. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm like I said, with the exception of that little bit we got during Gotham, I'm very excited about the Batman Superman film for the first time. It's kind of interesting that but like I said, whereas Marvel is playing a little bit heavier in its Captain America theme, I think that it was just such a weird little gear shift to go almost straight up comedy with the new Batman v Superman trailer.
Well, don't you think like the heavier tone is from Civil War is just that Steve and Tony were friends for a while. These are two friends coming to blows, but yeah, the other two, they're basically strangers at this point, so they don't mind punching each other in the face.
Yeah. Or to be more specific, Batman wants to punch Superman in the face. Superman really... I don't think Superman really cares that much about that. It's like, it's like, okay, you're gonna punch me now, Batman? Okay. I actually, and here's one thing I'll say, I actually like the idea of synthesized kryptonite better than kryptonite because, the science of kryptonite was always very, very weak. I actually have a scientific explanation for how kryptonite works, if you ever want to hear it. My basic idea is that, okay, so here you go, kids. I'm going to lay some science on y'all. Comic book science, but science nonetheless. Krypton, as we know, has a red sun. Red stars, so if a star is red as you're close to it, it means it's a very low-powered star. It's giving off very cool, very old heat. It's an old star. So Krypton's also probably fairly far away from it because it's probably already gone through one nova explosion. And so Krypton is this star, this planet, far away from a relatively cool, dying star, which means the amount of radiation coming off of it is much lower. So you have this thing: is how does life on this planet take that limited energy from that dying star to produce life? And what I think is, well, what if you had this sort of bioorganic crystalline structure that permeates the planet, permeates its biosphere, that essentially is what Krypton is. It is this that basically all the living things on this planet sort of incorporate these crystalline structures in their basic mitochondrial structure, allowing them to capture this low-level energy and store it, so that this is why they become these solar cells. Now, what happens is when you take one of these creatures from this planet with this cool, dying red star and put it into a part of the universe with a bright, hot yellow star, suddenly they're getting way more energy than their bodies were originally designed to incorporate. As a result, they gain superpowers. And what Kryptonite is that because it is sort of an inversion of that crystal, and what it is doing is actually sort of siphoning off excess energy, becoming almost like a magnet for that solar energy that has been stored in the cells of these creatures, possibly created by the explosion of Krypton itself. Somehow that energy release inverts the crystals in making them into this deadly substance. And this works with how we've seen Kryptonite work, in this idea that the original idea was that, well, radioactive material from Earth hurts humans, so radioactive material from Krypton would hurt a Kryptonian. Doesn't really make a lot of sense scientifically, but if we want to make that make sense, we'd have to say that these crystals are part of the basic Kryptonian biostructure, and that's what allows them to store this energy. And then when they come into contact with these crystals that are essentially leaching that energy, that's what causes them to depower.
Yeah, I can add to your theory is in some versions of the story, it said the planet blows up because of the Kryptonians were actually tampering with the planet itself, so some of their tinkering goes into that too.
Well,
sorry. I was gonna say, and in like the late '80s, like they explained why the more Kryptonians didn't get off the planet is because they were like, after a while they were genetically bonded to the planet, but not Kal-El, because see at that time he actually hadn't been born on Krypton. Like the Kryptonians had like test tube babies, and so they launched him into space, still in like his his incubator pod, and it didn't crack open until he hit Earth.
And that's interesting. Well,
yeah.
Actually, what I always thought would be a really, if I ever got hired by DC and they said, we want to completely destroy our universe and mess with our characters again, what stupid, crazy ideas do you have, Charlie? And I said, well, my idea would be that essentially, basically working on this idea is that you would have the Kryptonians as this race of people on Krypton who, on Krypton, they're normal. But once they get off of Krypton, once they start exploring the larger universe, they suddenly realize they're becoming gods. And you get these problems of these Kryptonian dictators just popping up throughout the universe. And then, of course, the Green Lantern Corps has to essentially get them off of these other worlds and hold them on Krypton and say, no, you guys are not allowed to leave Krypton because you folks can't handle what happens to you when you get exposed to a sun other than this nice, cool, dead, dying red star of yours. And that's why Kryptonians don't get to get out of Krypton very much, and why they actually, as Krypton's destroying, then the sort of more malicious Green Lanterns Corps, maybe even when they're still using the Manhunters, hold the Kryptonians there and don't let them escape. And only Kal-El in his one little escape pod, because it's so small, it gets out under the radar. And then, so the Green Lanterns are essentially caused the genocide of the Kryptonians because they were just because Kryptonians were too dangerous when they got off planet. That's how I'd ruin the DC universe. How would you do it?
But also there have been stories where like Kryptonite doesn't just affect Kryptonians. Like once again, like late '80s, early '90s. Lex Luthor had a Kryptonite ring made, so he was all happy that he could wear this ring 24/7 and keep Superman at bay. But after wearing it for years, it gave him cancer.
Yeah.
So they're like, yeah, the Kryptonite radiation affects humans, but it just takes much longer.
Yes. Well, and of course, if you go on the Smallville variation on the story, the meteorites, don't call it Kryptonite, the meteorites don't affect humans unless they get exposed to a lot of it. And to me, this is sort of where I got this idea of Kryptonite being this structure within Kryptonian DNA that essentially, if it gets in you, it can work in that same Kryptonian fashion, which is it can hold energy and then power you up in this bioorganic way of bioengineered way, bioenergy way that it powers you up with like a crystal. So, and like I said, this is just my crazy fan theory. I think it's actually pretty good. I think that it would work if you want to find an explanation for Kryptonian powers and you want to find an explanation for Kryptonite, and then I think this works nicely. But okay, and so why I actually like the idea of synthetic Kryptonite being created by Luthor, because it follows this idea not that, we're bringing this substance from Krypton, but that he's actually finding something that can hurt Superman, possibly based off of his own physiology. So this is what his physiology is, and this, actually even had this idea that, what if Kryptonite is like the remains of old Kryptonian creatures, of like the fossilized coal or oil from, or even just the remains of Kryptonians after the planet blew up, that, it gets compounded and crushed in the sort of, under heat and pressure, and it becomes these pure Kryptonite crystals, which, again, are deadly poison to Kryptonians. Yeah, these are my crazy fan theories about Superman and Kryptonite, and I have probably spent more time than most people thinking about exactly how you could both have a Superman and have Kryptonite and have it make some semblance of sense. One idea is that actually, that the energy given off by the Kryptonite sort of works at a half frequency different than the normal energies that are running through a living Kryptonian. And so in the same way that, when you have a half wavelength difference in sound, it can cancel the sound. It likewise cancels the energy within the cells of the Kryptonian. So, but that's that. And if we get that synthesized kryptonite, and it possibly has the effect of the synthesized kryptonite in Superman 3, which is that it doesn't necessarily weaken him or kill him, but gives him a faulty moral compass in the way that red kryptonite eventually became in both the Superboy story and the Smallville story, that they decided that, yes, red kryptonite, it's not going to make him physically weak, but we can make him morally weak, and we can get sort of bad guy Superman going in here, and wouldn't that be cool? And to me, the battle between Clark Kent and Superman in Superman 3 really, to me, it's like the most defining aspect of the Superman character, because it is the fact that what makes Superman isn't his Kryptonian physiology. It's his Clark Kent upbringing in Kansas. It's being raised by the good people who were the Kents, who instilled in him morals and the idea that, as it said in the very first serial, with great power comes great responsibility. First said to Superman by Pa Kent in the original Superman serials, or I forget who did the original Superman serials, but that is of course Pa Kent's line to him when after he saves Pa Kent from a tornado. So unlike the Man of Steel, where he saves Pa Kent from a tornado and he says, "Now never ever ever use your powers again," or doesn't save his pa from. I don't even know. I haven't seen that movie yet, but all I know.
You haven't watched
Oh no.
You haven't watched Man of Steel yet? You have to watch that before you watch Batman v Superman.
Oh, do I really have to? I watched Superman Returns. Is that enough? Is that not enough?
No, I mean, you probably don't have to, but Man of Steel's like kind of, I'm sure they'll reference it in Batman v Superman.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, yeah, clearly, because they blow up Metropolis, and that's a whole thing. That's why Batman's all at him, because he's like Joe. He's like my Joe Chill, but for an entire city. He killed lots of people, except he didn't actually kill lots of people. Zod killed lots of people. And, he was like, dude, I didn't tell you to kill all these people. And I didn't tell you to bioengineer Earth to be Krypton. I don't know why you did that. Don't you like having superpowers? I don't know. Doesn't make a lot of sense. But anyway, I digress. This is a Marvel podcast, isn't it? So
whatever you want it to be, Charlie.
So but that is that. And I did connect it with the Daredevil movie and things like that. And so I feel justified in my my little half tangent about Superman and Batman and the very cool, awesome Wonder Woman that we're going to be getting. And hopefully they don't weigh it down with too many other ancillary characters like Aquaman.
Oh, you and Lilith are really fighting now.
Oh, was she an Aquaman fan?
Yes.
See, you know what?
They do him right. Yes, she is.
Here's what I'm going to say. I don't have a problem with Aquaman as a character. I am really kind of confused by why Drago is why that guy from Games of Thrones is now from the desert in Game of Thrones is now the king of the sea. It's not my Arthur Curry. That's all I'm saying. It seems like a very weird way to present him, but okay, I'll go along with it. But that said, and speaking of Kings of the Sea, we got a preview recently of the new Squadron Supreme book. And did you see how that opens up?
I don't know if I actually saw that.
Well, spoilers. You don't want to be spoiled for something big, for big news coming in the post-Secret Wars world. Have a pause. Apparently, the first act of the Squadron Supreme is to take out Namor. Basically, Zod him, as they say in the DC universe. his neck because you know what? You keep on waging war on the surface world. You're killing millions of people. You're kind of a jerk, Namor, and I think that you've become too dangerous to be allowed to wander around. And this is what the tone of Squadron Supreme is these are these heroes who've lost their world, and they make the point that the Dr. Spectrum in this world is the one that was her world was destroyed by Namor during the incursions. And so there's just this feeling that, yeah, you know what, Namor? You're kind of a jerk, and we've decided to kill you. So I'm really excited about Squadron Supreme, to say the least. And I'm very excited about how Marvel seems to really be committing to this idea of this is the new generation of Marvel. That, we have new people taking on the legacy costumes and identities. And we're honestly cutting out all the characters that were bound to a point in time that, quite frankly, makes their existence difficult to work with. So, Nick Fury is aged out. He's now living on the moon. And, Steve Rogers, now an old man, as he should be because he's an old man. And, and of course now we have new Thor. And I think that is this commitment to this idea that this is the next stage of the Marvel Universe. This is the new Silver Age of comics, if you will, in the way that the old line Silver Age heroes from DC took over from the Golden Age heroes of DC, where they were the same heroes, but they now had different variations on their origins and stories. This, I think, is kind of that new Silver Age for Marvel. That so that you still have a Thor in the same way that you still had a Green Lantern, you still have a Captain America in the same way you still had a Flash, but their stories are slightly different, their costumes are different, their power sets are different, and the reason why they're the heroes are different. And I think that's a very great step for Marvel to make, even as I say, as it actively echoes this more historic change that DC did when they first rebooted their universe. With their Flash of Two Worlds. So, I mean, that's very exciting. And speaking of other worlds, we had what was not the final episode, the mid-season finale, which I did not say it was, but I thought it might have been. I did think it might have been, and I actually tweeted that I thought it was as we were going into it, and then I was like, oh, wow, there's another one next week. Yay! Because you're not going to get Timmy out of the infinite well. We have, and I guess what I guess they've named the planet Mavis.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
So we're going back to that planet, the planet of the exiled Inhuman. And so here's my thing. Now, I said last week that my theory was that one possible idea here is that the exiled Inhuman is Black Bolt, and that the founder of Hydra was Medusa. And after the last episode, I'm actually more intrigued with this idea. And this is so, I don't know if I'm, well, actually, no, I'll say mark my word. And here's going to be my theory, okay? Hydra was created by Medusa because here's the thing. Whoever wants to get this Inhuman back, they have to have a reason. And it's sort of this thing, where like Powers Booth in the last episode is talking to Ward, and it's like, yes, we'll bring back this unspeakable horror from beyond the stars, and then we'll be in charge of the universe. It's like, yes, this was a being banished because the super advanced spacefaring race, the Kree, felt he was too powerful and could not control him, so they exiled him to this distant dead world. But somehow when we bring him back, he's going to do what we say. Supervillains. Not thinking it through.
Never.
1938.
Usually not the brightest guys.
Yeah, clearly. Well, it's like they used to say in the old Marvel handbook to the old handbook to the Marvel universe. When they'd say, upon gaining superpowers, not being particularly creative, this villain immediately turned to robbing banks because that was all he could think to do with his powers. Well, I guess I have powers. I'll go rob a bank because that seems like it would be a logical thing to do. I have super strength. What else could I do with it? But Go into this bank, take the money. I can't imagine how this won't work out exactly the way I planned. And that's where Power Suit is. I can't imagine why bringing a living super weapon from beyond the stars, an immortal living super weapon from beyond the stars, to my planet is not going to have any outcome except me as king of the world, because I'll be the boss then.
Well, that's the same thinking that, let's build some nuclear weapons. Nothing can possibly go wrong.
Well, yes, except that nuclear weapons, you have to push the button. This was actually, this is my favorite line about super soldiers and living weapons from the Dark Claw comic book from the old Amalgam universe, when Dark Claw is talking about his archenemy, the Jackal, who is sort of a cross between Sabretooth and the Joker, and is just really an awesome character. I mean, honestly, Joker with freaking Sabretooth powers, that's about as good of a villain as you're ever going to have. I'm sorry. And, and Darkclaw, who, of course, is your Wolverine pastiche, or your Wolverine Batman amalgam, because they say we're both part of this this program to create a living weapon. But the thing that people don't realize is that when you create a living weapon, it's not the same as creating a weapon. A gun can't pick itself up off the table and decide to start shooting people, but you make a living weapon, suddenly it's going to decide who it's going to kill, because it's a living weapon. It's not under your control. And so, you can have that parallel to nuclear weapons or any other weapon, but the difference is that you are still in charge of that weapon, even if, yes, some accident could happen. You could accidentally launch nuclear weapons. You could accidentally shoot yourself while cleaning your gun, which happens a frightening amount of times in people's lives. But if you actually, had a sentient AI gun that was going around your house shooting at things that it determined were threats, that is probably going to end poorly. And likewise, the plan is going to end poorly. And here's my thing. The only way it doesn't, but the reason why I think you come back to this idea of Medusa being the founder of Hydra is because, as I said, Medusa does have this history as a villain. But more to the point, you have to have someone who wants to bring this creature back. Someone who believes that they can have control over this creature. And the only being that could have control over Black Bolt is Medusa. The only being that could possibly be conceived to have control over this being would be this being's consort. So, as I said, there's like two real possibilities for who they might, if it's going to be someone we know. And the possibilities are Black Bolt, which is what I'm thinking it is, or there was this unnamed king of the Inhumans before Black Bolt, who was exiled, who we meet in the first or was either the first or the second arc of the Mighty Avengers. And and that's it's a possibility that it is this being, this superpowered king who is exiled of the Inhumans. But then you have, well, why does anyone want to bring him back? Who's going to want to bring him back except for, unless they're just supervillains. But here's my thing. They have made the point about how the Hydra logo evolved from this other logo. But we also know that the S.H.I.E.L.D. logo and the Hydra logo have similar iconography. So you have this idea that S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra both come out of this same group, which we know they in many ways do. And if you have this idea of this ancient order of the S.H.I.E.L.D. and this ancient order of the Hydra, both coming from the same origin point, both sort of founded by the Inhumans, as this effort to bring their exiled king home, that, some of it goes off and becomes Hydra, some of it goes off and becomes S.H.I.E.L.D., but at the end, they are the Inhuman royal court who is behind the creation of these organizations with the intent of finding King Black Bolt and bringing him home. And that's my crazy fan theory. We got one more day to find out if it's true. Should be airing on Tuesday. And then they're going to tell us all the secrets. And then we'll have a couple of weeks off before Agent Carter starts. And I can't imagine them putting us on a cliffhanger, right? It won't be a cliffhanger.
Of course not.
Hanging over next week. Yeah, I'm just saying. Watch IMDb. Look for Vin Diesel having credits in next week's episode of Agents of Shield. Yes, but yeah. So that is my theory. That is my plan, and that is my expectation of the Marvel universe. And I think that's a pretty good connection to leave it on. What do you think, Phil?
Oh yeah, I mean we did Marvel and DC tonight.
Yeah, well, you got to get people ready for the all new, all different, all 52 Marvel versus DC podcast coming soon to podcasts near you. And where can they find you, Phil, when they want to talk to you or listen to you talk?
Well, if you want to email me your ideas for the crossover, you can email me nightwingpdp@gmail.com. On Twitter, talk to me anything Marvel and DC. I'm at nightwingpdp on Twitter. And I'm all over the Southgate Media Group podcast.
Before the Bat and the
Flash Arrow Power Hour, World's Finest, where we review the DC comics. And then, of course, Marvel Roundup with Charlie, of course.
Yes. Yeah. And of course, if you want to reach out to me, you can tweet me on Twitter at Charlie&rsquo, CharlieEsser. Look for the two E's in the middle for quality. And of course, write me at all times at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. And of course, you can listen to me on Superconnectivity once a week. You can listen to me with Phil, my main man, every week on the all-new Marvel Roundup. And you will soon be able to listen to me and Lilith and Phil on the Marvel vs. DC podcast. And I'm going to get a new podcast very soon with Dave White, dynamic Dave White, as we discuss the origins of the MCU, in my opinion. And as we from the 80s Reboot Overdrive podcast start talking about the 1980s Incredible Hulk series starring Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno, called the Gamma Cast. So listen for that one, kids. Watch for it on Southgate Media. And that's all the connections for this week, folks. I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope you connect with us again. Thank you.